Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there, welcome along to Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners. Now, on today's show, we're going to be discussing SMEs and business tax after Google's £130 million tax payment. We're going to be talking about the need for a level playing field for small businesses. My guest on today's show is Antonio Falco, Small Business Champion and Surrey Federation of Small Business FSB. Antonio, lovely to have you with us on the programme today. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks, Steve.
Interesting times we live in at the moment. You've brought in a number of newspaper clippings. Before we get to those and we talk about the real core of the subject today, just a little bit about Antonio Falco. Who are you and what are you?
Well, as you know, Steve, and thank you for having me on the show again, I'm a business consultant. I specialise in helping companies with sales and business development. How on earth are we going to get the next customer in the door? What's our process? How are we going to do it? What do we need to say? How do we put our story across in a way that says, you know what, our product says what it says on or it does what it says on the tin? And that whole process is something that lots of companies take on the fly. I try and teach them that actually is a process, there is a methodology. Selling isn't about the gift of the gab. It is about an art and a science to finding new customers and show them that your product or service does what it says. And
that's what you do as a day job nearly, isn't it? That's a day-to-day thing. But really what you're doing as well, along with the FSB too, but you are championing small business. And a lot of people will say now that small businesses are the thing that's going to drag the UK out of a permanent recession. It's the thing that's going to be successful. It's the thing that's going to make us different. It's the thing that will make us different. And of course, in the news over the last couple of weeks, there's always this issue of the inland revenue tax, and we've had a lot in the news recently concerning Google, the 3% that they paid. Now, tell us a little bit about where you're coming from that angle.
Okay. Well, the first thing I want to say, Steve, is that my role as the regional chairman for Surrey and West Sussex for the FSB is slightly different to the role I'm here today. I don't want to be watching.
So you're not officially representing FSB. This is your
my
view.
Exactly. I was just lucky a couple of weeks back to be in a situation where I was at a conference that was put together by the FSB, and I got the opportunity to ask the Chancellor a question. And this whole question was on corporation tax. Subsequently an article appeared in the Mail Online, and then the following day on the 3rd of February it appeared in the Daily Mail itself.
And it really has had a lot of coverage actually that is here at the moment. If we have a look in the Sunday Times, there's a little piece here actually about the Osborne family firm pays no corporation tax, which we'll come back to in just a moment. But George Osborne has shared in a £335,000 dividend payout from his family's profitable wallpaper business, even though it's not paid any UK corporation tax for the past 7 years. That was on the Sunday Times. And here George tells small firms, I felt your pain on Careers Day. He calls for web giants to face. Now this is the interesting bit, isn't it here? He calls for web giants to face the same rules as small business. Now, if you are a small business at the moment, do you feel that you are actually obeying the same rules as Google are? HMRC staff lack manners and respect. Well, that'll come up in just a moment as well. Let's just have a look at where else we've got. You've got another cutting there, haven't you?
I've got another article to do with Google and essentially the power of corporations such as Google. So that appeared in the Sunday Times yesterday.
And that is interesting. This is an article that went out just the other day. Yeah. Google is strip mining the world's culture as well. So we're talking about a multi-million-pound organisation that is worldwide. Now, we've got to remember that when it comes to the likes of Google, we all use the Google product on a day-by-day basis. In fact, we're using part of the Google Corporation to bring you this program today. So to a certain extent, a lot of the things that they supply us, and we don't pay for them on a day-by-day basis, a lot of the things that they supply we do use. But there is a fundamental principle that is sitting here at the moment. Tell us where you were. Where was this meeting with the FSB again?
Well, this was the policy conference that was at the Queen Elizabeth Building in central London by Westminster. And the Chancellor came on and gave some open remarks as to state of the economy, his thoughts on small business. And he made a very interesting comment 2/3 of the way through his opening remarks that triggered a question in me that I thought I'd better ask. And he said, small businesses pay their taxes. So when I stood up to ask the question, I said, Chancellor, you said in your opening remarks that small businesses pay their taxes. I said, you're absolutely right. Small businesses do pay their taxes.
Don't say any more. Hold the thought, because what we can do, we can actually show you the little clip when Antonio asked the Chancellor about the taxes that small businesses pay.
Chancellor, my name is Antonio Falco. I'm the Regional Chairman for Surrey and West Sussex. You mentioned in your opening remarks that small businesses pay their taxes. You're absolutely right. And my personal company tax bill was way more than Facebook's. You see where I'm going with this? So here's the thing. We all know this is a sophisticated group. We all know that 3%, which has been the headline figure for Google, is not reality. Corporation tax is 20%, but it just makes a great story. And we don't want to pretend here that the businesses here aren't trying to mitigate their tax liability themselves by making the gap between the income and the profit as big as possible. So nobody's going to lie that we're not trying to do that. Of course we are. But my point is this. All I want is in business, and as you said yourself, being in business is tough. And I don't mind being in a tough game. All I want is the same rules. You wouldn't have a game of football with one half playing one set of rules and the other half playing another set of rules. That's all we're asking for. And as for HMRC, my colleague made a comment there, can we have a little bit of manners and respect for small businesses? You know, they talk to people, and I haven't had a case in this, I hear a lot of my customers have, they talk to people in a manner which is, frankly, in the modern era, is unacceptable. And so a bit of respect and the same rules will be great. Thank you.
I think they're both very good points. Look, on the, this issue of international tax laws and how we apply them in Britain, there is a challenge, which is the tax laws that are used to tax multinational corporations were devised in the 1920s, literally, and they were not, they didn't keep pace with not just the growth of the global economy and all the trade that's happened since then, but also the growth of the internet. We have been trying to get international agreement to change those laws, and that international agreement is coming, and only last week we got 30 other countries, the big countries of the world and the rich countries of the world, to sign up to an agreement to publish and exchange, to exchange information on the tax affairs of companies, so we know what each other are up to as tax authorities, and we're seeking to get it changed so that they also publish that information, so there's transparency. Now, I've heard lots of proposals about getting rid of corporation tax altogether, creating a turnover tax. I would just enter this note of caution. That means a business that has made no money in a particular year, that is maybe in a recession, or a company that for whatever has lost a big order, they would be being hit with a tax bill. So I think before we rush to some other solution, I would try and make corporation tax work, which is a tax on profits. And in particular, and this is where a lot of the anger has come, make sure that we are taxing the genuine economic activity that happens in this country. Now, that's always a challenge because, if you make a car in Britain and you sell it in another country, how much of the profit is because it was well sold in the sale room and how much of the profit is because it was built in Britain and the designers were in Britain and so on. So, this is not an easy, issue to deal with, but clearly the internet has made it much more challenging. And I have introduced last year what's called a diverted profits tax, and it only came into force last year. So, some things you've read about are about getting money from companies prior to that. But this new rule says that if we can show real economic activity happen in this country, it should be taxed in this country rather than passed off to some other country in the world. But I tell you, in the end, for me, the real solution to this problem is this. Many of the companies you're talking about and have been in the press are American companies, right? We need more of these British companies, right? We need British companies growing and succeeding on the internet and in the new technologies, and I'm putting every effort into trying to nurture those companies so that Britain has these big names out there that you work with in your business and personal life, just like we've got those big American companies.
Interesting. Some interesting points there, actually, that the Chancellor made. I do feel, though, that they're making the excuses, they're using the excuses of the fact that technology has come along and caught them all by surprise. Yes, they're talking about the internet, they're talking about the way that trading is done, but it's been, you know, this is no surprise. We've been using the internet for the last 10 years or so. So it's all about looking forward and planning. Small businesses have to look forward and plan, don't they?
They do, Stephen. I think there's a couple of points I want to make in regard to my question and his response. The first thing is that whilst we're all a little bit upset and a little bit angry and a bit sort of annoyed as to how on earth some of these corporations are getting away with doing what they're doing, first thing, it's not illegal what they're doing. Secondly, I couched the question in a way that wasn't confrontational. There is no point trying to ask a serious question in some sort of confrontational manner, because you're just not going to elicit an intelligent response, or indeed, what's more important, an intelligent solution that's going to come from questions like that. So when you're in a situation, I've been lucky enough to ask the Chancellor several questions over the past couple of years at the conferences he's been to. He's picked my hand up to ask questions. And so you have to just be a little bit intelligent in terms of the way that you put a question together. Yes, the press picked it up because it was a relevant question for the time. Yes, they picked it up because it's a question that needs to be dealt with, and there's a growing call for action now from a variety of different quarters. We know in the past couple of weeks, Steve, there's been several programmes on television about corporation tax and how on earth to avoid it and how does it all work. So it's growing at a pace. But you have to ask a question, as I did, I thought, in a way that says, look, we're not here to be confrontational. We're also not here to be naive. You know, all businesses are trying to mitigate their tax position. Let's not lie about it. We're all doing that. It's just that sometimes we're maybe a bit angry that somebody's doing it better than we are. And so that was my point. My point is that whilst we're all trying to mitigate our tax position, small businesses seem to be more obliged to pay their taxation, whereas corporations have the ability, the resources to avoid as much of it as they possibly can. And the Google situation, to me, is almost like a token gesture. We better pay them something. And that's why I think there's a three-pronged approach as to how we begin to deal with this problem. His response, which I'll come to later, his response, yes, it's the taxation system's old. It's unwieldy. The corporations are now international. We've never had to deal with this before. And maybe he's right about all that. But first thing is, the taxation system is so incredibly complicated. There needs to be some simplification.
I'll tell you what, hold that thought, because we will come back to that in just a few moments' time. It also seems to me, actually, that there are two immediate issues. There is the way that we are dealt with as small businesses. There is a personal level, and then there's also the rules that we're playing by. So there are two issues that we can talk about as the programme progresses on today. You're watching Business Connections Live. Now, as always, we're here every week. We're live Monday at noon or thereabouts, and we battle through the live programme, as always, to bring you some great business information. If you think that you'd be a great guest on the programme, we'd love to hear from you as well, for that matter. So if you'd like to be part of the programme, if you'd like to be part of our business community, then please do get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. Let's look back at one of the programmes that we did. In fact, the programme that we were talking about last week, we had Denise Quinlan of Insightful Images and Mark Walker of Burway PR about how to stand out from the crowd, engage your audience and build your brand. That's what we were talking about last week. Always important. I'm sure Antonio would have comments on that, being as that's the area that he's in when it comes to... we are always, I suppose, selling ourselves, aren't we? And sometimes to make ourselves stand out from the crowd, we have to be maybe a little bit different. It isn't just... the moment, I think they said it last week, the moment you say that's good enough, then it isn't good enough. You just got to consider that if you are a small business. Let's hear what Denise and also Mark said on last week's edition of Business Connections Live. Today we're going to be discussing how to stand out from the crowd, how to engage your audience, and probably the most important thing if you're in business is to build your brand. Now, my guests of today's show I've got two, in fact, Denise Quinlan of Insightful Images and Mark Walker of Burway.
they're probably more crucial than we realise. 65% of us are visual learners. We take in information visually. And I read a fabulous statistic that says that our brain processes images and visual messages 60,000 times faster than words. So that just gives an indication of how much impact an image can have, or how much we're absorbing that. So it's really important that that image is good.
I think it's absolutely vital that businesses of whatever size work out what their unique sales proposition is and work messages around that. And it may be in combination with images, or it may be, say, a written article or a blog, but they have to go through that process.
Content that has relevant images gets 94% more views than content with irrelevant images or no images. But there is still a tendency, from a traditional point of view, to go for the standard headshot. And I believe there is room for that in your portfolio of images that you may use for different occasions. But the ones that help you stand out are the ones where there's more thought and consideration gone into it.
When you're working, say, with a startup company, it can be about looking at the character of the founder and their track record as much as talking about the new product or the new app or new service that they've developed. I think they don't focus externally enough. They're very keen to tell you about their products and the services and where they go and how they help companies, but they don't really come through with the actual detail.
We're in London. We've got a great opportunity for some iconic backdrops, and Paul there is the CEO of an organisation, and so there was a bit of irony with the St Paul's as the background as well, playing on his name. But he's based in the city. London has, is very iconic. He's a businessman. He's all about people. So there was that, trying to find something that resonated with the sort of person he is and where he's from and where he's based. My name is Denise Quinlan. I'm from Insightful Images. I'm a specialist business photographer, helping you and your business to stand out from the crowd. I guess there are 3 points I'd like to, hints and tips that I'd like to get across to you. One is visual is important. Don't underestimate the power of visual. We process the images so quickly, that shows you how important and impactful they are. So make sure your photograph is a good one. Tell the story. Number 2, tell the story. Pick on something that is relevant about yourself, about your business, and focus just on that one point and bring that out in the image. And that will help you stand out from the crowd. And there's a lovely quote by Airbnb that anonymity erodes trust. So not having a photograph isn't actually a good option for you. I think you're doing yourself a disservice to yourself and your business. People like to see people have your photograph engaging with your viewers and the people who are going to be looking at your photograph.
My name's Mark Walker. I'm with Burway PR. I'm a PR consultant and business writer, and I'm helping mid-size and small companies tell stories. There are 3 things that I would say to organisations. The first is to think about what is unique. What's your USP? Is it what your customers are saying? Talk to your customers. Find out what your coal-face personnel are saying. If you don't have any customers, think about your niche market, and think about what your ideal customer would want, or what contacts in the business are looking for. The second thing is, always have your customers speaking for you. Absolutely essential to have that customer endorsement, and it may be through an article, or it might simply be a sentence or 2 that's displayed on a website. They have tremendous power. The third thing is, in an age of rolling media, we have to look at how we can provide some sort of context for what's going on out there. Can we provide some interpretation as to how markets and business and life changes? If your business can offer insights, if it can actually share some ideas for free with people, it will be in a very strong place to be able to influence and to attract customers and prospects. It's all about telling stories.
Absolutely fascinating show. If you get an opportunity, do watch the entire edition of Business Connections Live from last week, where we're looking all about image. Hashtag branding was our subtitle on that particular programme. And don't forget, if you've got any comments on the programme, do leave it below on the YouTube page. If you're watching on iTunes, that's fantastic too. If you're on Roku, hello to you. So thank you once again for always watching us here at Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Antonio Falco, Small Business Champion and Surrey Federation of Small Business FSB representative with us today. But really, we're talking to Antonio in his own right today. A small business champion really is what we're talking about. In the previous segment, we saw you asking the question of the Chancellor. What were the other things that came out, do you think, of the answer?
Well, I think for me, there has to be some thought process, some beginnings as to how to look at dealing with this whole issue, because for sure people are going to get angry if something isn't seen to be done, and that's the thing, isn't it? Not just seen to be done, but actually something happening. So I kind of thought from my question, and as you see from his answer, that there has to be some thought put to this and there's a three-pronged approach, I think, to doing this. The first one being government. And I have to say on that point, I saw some clips from the Select Committee last Thursday where the CEO, Managing Director for Google, was questioned about Google's tax position. I found that a little bit disappointing. The clip that I saw, Steve, was the chair of the Select Committee essentially asking the CEO for what his salary was, and I thought, well, why is that relevant to their corporation tax? Her response was, well, you know, if I ask the question, then it's relevant, and I thought, well, this isn't the way to start dealing with it.
There's a question for you straight away. Our politicians, our local representatives, our MPs, are they the right people to be actually sitting on select committees and doing this kind of interrogation?
Well, at the moment, they're the only people that are because they're the ones that eventually make the laws and change the system in terms of how it all works.
Is there a better way, do you think?
I think there has to be some input from the private sector, certainly from businesses themselves, because they know the inner workings of how they operate their business. So yes, I think there has to be some sort of partnership. But certainly government has to lead the way in that. So in my three-pronged approach is to, and by the way, three-pronged approach, not three-pronged attack,
right.
Because it's not about attacking anything. This is about how do we solve an issue like this. So coming back to that Select Committee, you know, where she was just asked him, I think, 4 times what his salary was, and I thought that's not what this is about. You know, it's almost like, well, if you ask him what he has on his toast in the morning, is that relevant because you've asked the question? It was a preposterous situation to be in. So the three-pronged attack for me, Steve, is one is government. What can government do? And you heard George Osborne answer that the first thing he started to do is this diverted profit tax. Now, how that's going to shape out and how that comes out in the wash, because in his earlier response, he said, you know, how do we actually work out where companies are making their profit? So I think they have to work out where does a business actually make its profit in order then that you can look at how you can tax that profitability. So government has to play a part in this and look at how they can simplify the tax system and how they can look at some of the loopholes that are clearly being exploited by some of these corporations. I think the second thing is companies themselves. You know, companies themselves have sort of, I keep saying, some moral responsibility to paying their taxes. There was a programme a few weeks ago that some of the viewers here might have watched about the town in Wales that tried to offshore themselves.
Didn't try, they were successful.
Well, they were successful, exactly, and I'm not sure there's a lot that in-land revenue could do about it if they actually went ahead and implemented it. But what was really interesting was the uncomfortable feelings that a number of the small businesses that were part of that programme felt about not paying their taxes. Because their response was, well, how does this get paid for? How does the lighting get paid for? How does the road get paid for? So there was almost a moral duty to pay their taxes. And so I think corporations themselves need to look at themselves and go, well, look, you know, we are operating in a country. Yes, Google legitimately put their profits offshore because they have responsibilities elsewhere, and I understand why they do it and how they do it. But they also have to say to themselves, but we also use the infrastructure of this country in order to operate our business. You know, we use the roads, we use the lighting systems. You know, the people that work for us have to use the health system, have to use the local government services. So there has to be companies themselves that know, perhaps we have a moral duty here, perhaps we have a responsibility here. And Steve, if you remember just several years ago, a handful of years ago, you know, this country bailed out the banks because we were told it would be the end of the world if we didn't. So we accepted it and we did it. Well, you know what? Perhaps now companies and banks need to bail us out.
But there is a difference here, though, isn't there? We talk about the banks, and the banks are brought up on a regular basis that it would be that we bailed them out for one reason. But if Google wasn't here tomorrow, it would be inconvenient. If the banks aren't here tomorrow, then it would be catastrophic. So it's a completely different kind of industry that we're talking about.
It is. But what I'm saying is, as a body of corporate companies, they perhaps need to say to themselves, maybe we have a moral duty here. Maybe in difficult times we have a bit of a responsibility here. Because small businesses, do you know, Steve, small businesses pay their taxes. Do you know why? Because small businesses can't afford not to pay their taxes. Now that's the difference as well.
And small businesses are easy targets as well.
And we're easy targets as well.
Easy targets to get at. I think it's this whole line about morality. I mean, for instance, there was another programme about tax avoidance, and the question that was asked to the person in the programme was, you can avoid as much tax as you feel morally happy with.
Absolutely.
So it's down to individual morals. Now, if we were to take some of the energy companies at the moment, the morality doesn't come into it anymore. Over the last couple of years, we've seen energy prices increase because there was supposedly the price of the raw materials were going up. Now that they've gone all the way down, we've seen some of the energy companies cutting their bills by a mere 5% on one of the services and nothing on another. There is no morality, I think, in businesses of the size of the large multinational energy companies, the large internet organisations. It isn't about that kind of morality. It's not the same morality that you as a small business owner is working to.
It isn't, Steve, but that's why I'm actually putting it forward as something to start to contemplate.
So
that's
how
why
do you legislate morality?
You can't legislate morality. But that's why the third prong of my approach is actually us ourselves as customers. You see, it was interesting when they questioned people a couple of weeks ago. There was roaming reporters both on the radio and television stopping people in the street, Steve, saying, "What do you think about Facebook's corporation tax being under £5,000? I think they paid £4,582, something like that." Well, of course, the responses you can guess. Disgust, anger, incredulity, how on earth they get away with it, it's disgraceful. But when the reporter said, well, do you use Facebook? Everybody said, yes, I use Facebook. And then when the reporter, Steve, said, so are you going to stop using Facebook? Not one single person said no. Not one single person. So you know what? We're complicit as part of this.
Yes.
Because what people don't understand about the capitalist environment that we all love and want to work in and want to keep is that one of the most powerful elements of it is the customer. Our ability to stop giving money. You see, in business, what are we trying to do? We're trying to exchange our product or service for a potential customer's money. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make that exchange. It's a simple journey, but a complex one at the same time. We've talked about that in previous shows. Well, you know what? If you don't like what Facebook are doing, there's two things you can do. One, use social media against them. Tell them what you think. Use what they put in place to tell them what you think. And the second thing is, stop using them. There's nothing more powerful than when a company sees money coming in through the door.
But do you honestly think that there is a big enough sort of wave of public opinion to actually make even a dent into the way? So, you know, even if a million people were to say, you know, Facebook, I mean, we've had this, Google, millions of people have said, you know, it's not quite right what they're doing. They've still only paid 3% over the last 10 years.
Steve, look.
And that's been agreed. So even with a public outcry, it's just a bit of news for a moment. It is a bit like Twitter. 5 minutes on the windscreen of a car on a windy day, the message is gone.
But Steve, I've said this a couple of years back at a speech I was giving out to a business group. I said, we have entered the era of people power. That's what we're in. We're in the era of people power.
It's galvanising a group.
It takes time.
Righto.
It takes time. This is a long, ongoing journey. That's why I'm saying it's a three-pronged approach. Government has to play its part. It needs to look at things like, as George Osborne said, diverted tax, profit tax. They need to look at that. And there's other things they can do too. Companies themselves need to say to themselves, do you know what, maybe we have a bit of a duty here. You know, it's incredible. When I saw and heard that story about the reporter asking me about Facebook, And everybody said, well, no, I'm still going to use it. I thought, do you know what? They must have been laughing their heads off at Facebook thinking, we can just do whatever we like.
But isn't this the biggest issue, this whole thing about the fact that you feel the moral inclination within society to pay your taxes for the services that you receive, but there will be an equal number of people out there who will be looking at not only avoidance, which we've got to remember is perfectly legal, but also evasion, which is illegal, to reduce their tax bills. There are people out there, there are large corporates out there who have got hundreds of people, thousands of people working on that pure thing to do to reduce the amount of money that they pay into the exchequer.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm saying that small businesses can't afford not to pay their taxes, because they don't have the resources, financially and otherwise, to be able to employ those teams of people to figure out how they actually should reduce even greater their tax liability. But as I said earlier on, in the programme that we saw the BBC made a couple of weeks ago about that Welsh town, there's a lot of small businesses saying, no, actually, we have a moral duty to pay our taxes.
They were uncomfortable, weren't they?
They were uncomfortable about it, and that's why it will never happen. But the thing is, Steve, this is a long journey. That's why I'm saying it's a three-pronged approach. You know, companies themselves need to think, maybe we have a duty here. See, I believe, actually, that there is morality in business. I believe that companies can reflect on how they operate in society. I believe that they can look at themselves and go, do you know what, we're making a lot of money already. Perhaps actually we have a duty to invest in the society that we're in. See, one of the things I keep saying is the small businesses are critical, not because of the recovery, because we are going to actually contribute to the recovery. It is small businesses that are going to do that. There's 4.5 million businesses, small businesses in the UK. If they each took on one extra person, imagine the unemployment situation. Well, there wouldn't be any unemployment. Imagine the taxation off the back of that. So I think that there is a morality in play here, and that's why I think that small businesses can lead the way at that. But we as customers need to play our part too.
OK, hold on that thought. So we as customers need to play our part as well. I mean, what's your opinion on this? Do you have an opinion on this? I don't know. Keep tuned. You're watching Business Connections Live, and if you're enjoying today's programme, and we hope you are, then you're probably already engaged. You're probably sitting at your laptop, at your PC at the moment, and you're screaming at it because you've got a view, you've got an opinion. If you want to, you can actually get your view to us right now, BCL Business TV. If you want to tweet something, we'll have somebody looking at the tweets, and we'll get the questions up if you want to throw one at Antonio. But what a great way to engage your audience. If you are sitting there and you are engaged into this programme, fancy having a program like this for yourself, you could do. We call it Business Connections Direct. I'll just pop that up on the screen, I think, here. I'll just get that for the moment. And you can go to our website and you can find out a little bit more about what Business Connections Direct is all about. Effectively, what we're saying to you is it's an opportunity for you to have effective sales videos. So we'll take you aside, we'll show you exactly how to produce these particular programs. You can have a program like this one if you wanted to, or you can have short, concise sales targeted programs with clear calls to action on it. If you'd like more details on how you can have a program like this one, or as sales videos, then all you've got to do is get in contact with us here at Business Connections Live. Here come all the details that you need. You can kick off by sending us an email if you wish to studio@businessconnectionslive.com. If you want to chat to us, we would love to have a little word with you. Then you can call us on 01784 256 777. And if you want to follow our train of consciousness here from Business Connections Live, then you can follow us on Twitter at BCL Business TV. It's a great way of maybe communicating and joining the community. We are a small business community. We're small business. We have large businesses who are involved in our community as well. So get involved. There's something like 3,000 individual people who are following us. And we make absolutely certain that when we follow them back, that they are proper small businesses, that they are people, they are movers and shakers, that they are real businesses, that they're not just some, a person who is just sort of setting up for the first time, or a small business. We're looking for quality people to be part of this community. Are you one of those? Well, then do get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. You're watching Business Connections Live. On today's show, we're discussing SMEs and business tax after Google's £130 million tax payment. We're talking to Antonio Falco, a small business champion. So, three-pronged attack. We looked at one of the prongs. Approach, not attack. Approach. The first one is that the government has a responsibility to look. Governments had the responsibility, though, in the past, very briefly, and they haven't done a particularly good job at it.
No, but
are they the right people to be doing this?
Well,
they're the only people.
They're the only people at the moment because they make the laws. Look, Steve, over the past 4 or 5 years, I think since actually the crash that we had in 2008, I think companies are starting to come under scrutiny. How do you operate? How do you do what you do? How do you make your product? How do you get it out there? Are you ethical? Are you looking at how you deal with your people? Are you paying your taxes? Companies are coming under more and more scrutiny. And so early on you said to me, how on earth are we going to galvanise people? How on earth are we going to get enough people to look at maybe avoiding using a product or a service or a company? It takes time, but I think that road has started. And again, I'm not in the business of attacking any business. It's great that we have businesses. It's great that small businesses actually become big businesses. We want that. We want an environment where you, I, any of the people watching, some of the people that aren't watching, maybe one day wake up and think, I've got a great idea to try my own wings and go out on my own. And we want that because, you know, the human species has developed over the millennia because of their ability to stride out into the unknown. So we want that to happen because that's what makes an invigorating environment. So I'm not against business or corporations. All I'm saying is that we need to just have a bit more of a level playing field. And I'm just using this opportunity to launch myself as this small business champion. There are other things that are happening in business that are I use the word unfair, but I don't. But life is unfair anyway, so I don't want it to be, you know, oh gosh, this is somebody moaning. It's not about moaning. This is about just having an even playing field, and that's what I asked the Chancellor.
And that's what you said to him in your question as well. You don't mind playing a game of football if both sides are playing to the same rules.
I don't mind. Business is tough. He knows it because his family's had a business for many years. I don't mind being in a tough game. You don't mind being in a tough game. It's what actually spurs us on to actually get better at what we do. But
it's interesting. I mean, we're going to the second prong of your approach, but it's interesting you say that. We go back to the story there, and of course his family are doing exactly the same as any business would do. They are looking at the most appropriate way to pay the dividends to the shareholders in their business. So the responsibility, the morality in that business is to the shareholders.
It is.
And not to society at large, even though he is the Chancellor.
And that's my argument, you see. Yes, the responsibility is to the shareholders. And we're all shareholders in something. Anybody who's got a pension is a shareholder in something, whether you know it or not. And so we all want those companies that our pensions depend on to actually perform well. But actually, I think that the little people like us actually understand that there has to be some sense of doing the right thing. And so when you've got a situation, and I think this is a difficult situation for the Chancellor because he is obviously a shareholder, from what I understand, of the business, so it's a little bit tricky.
It's not a comfortable position to be in, is it? When you've got that coming into the press like that. But it's not do as I do. It's do as I say, isn't it? Within
well, autocracy has that problem, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So, look, do I think we all have a responsibility? We all have to look at ourselves and go, what's wrong and what's right? Yes, we all want to mitigate our situation. We all want to pay less for something. But there comes a point where we know we still have to pay something. Otherwise, what is it we're going to end up with?
Prong two, then.
Prong two, companies themselves. And I said earlier on that small businesses pay their taxes because we can't afford not to. Corporations, I think, need to look at themselves and go, is our PR approach right to this? You know, I would have liked to have seen somebody at Facebook stop the cheque going out and say, hang on a second, we're only sending HMRC £4,500 this is going to get out in the press somewhere, let's have a conversation about this. Let's look at how we actually operate as a business. And look, all I'm saying is, in these difficult times, remember, the Chancellor is looking to cut £20 billion off public expenditure. Do you know how much corporation tax is being sifted away? £20 billion.
So there you go, problem solved for the nation.
Just saying,
if we could redirect.
That a large corporation that already makes billions of pounds of profit, nothing wrong with that, fantastic, congratulations, carry on doing it, it's fantastic, and the but is, you have a bit of a responsibility. In our environment, in our society, where you are looking to build a business and use the services and the infrastructure that we have, that has to be paid for.
But the large businesses would say that they are paying for it indirectly because they are employing people
paying national insurance,
insurance, and they're paying that. So their employees are paying their taxes. Take away the large multinational corporate, and the tax revenue then disappears.
Yeah, but I'm not saying take away the large. I want the large multinational corporate here. We all do. I haven't said, and earlier on I was clear, we want big businesses. All I'm saying is that we've come to a point where currently, in our current financial environment, maybe we just need to look, maybe we just don't want them to be as aggressive as they're being.
I suppose the problem is the word maybe. And what they're doing is they are within the letter of the law. They're legitimate in what they're doing, and they're doing it better than we are. And if we all had the opportunity to do it, then we would do it.
But that's where you're wrong. Because
I don't think if it's the norm, I think the people like Jimmy Carr, he was involved with a scheme. Well, you know, I'm sure Jimmy wouldn't mind us mentioning. He was involved in a scheme that was completely 100% legal.
Yep.
And he got lambasted for it. And he would have been approached by his accountant. The accountant would have said, here are the rules that have been written by the government of the land. The government has said you can do this. So therefore, if you follow these rules, you are within the letter of the law. The moment you start bringing ethics into it or morality into it, it's shades of grey. And you'll never get round shades of grey.
You won't.
Because there are business owners who are ruthless in business, and they will work their employees to the bone. I mean, we see this if we go to the Middle East. You've got people that are working not just on the minimum wage, but minimum wage that wouldn't last a day in this country. So morality is a difficult thing to police.
It is. And I'm not saying. I said to the Chancellor, this is.
I love that. I said to the Chancellor. I said, listen here, George.
Well, what I did was he's trying to tackle a very difficult problem, and there is no 100% end solution to this. I'm just asking people to think. I'm just asking people to say, hold on a second, what I'm doing is not wrong, but actually what I'm doing isn't necessarily right either. And all I'm just saying to corporations is this, that you're part of our fabric. I say this a lot, Steve. Small businesses are critical to the economy, not just because they're critical to the economy, but because they're actually a part of the fabric of their local society. And what I want to say to corporations is that you're part of the fabric of this society. So that actually means that you have just that extra responsibility that maybe doesn't actually show on a balance sheet.
When we talk about morality then, should it be a case that we're trying to win hearts and minds? I mean, I know we haven't talked about prong 3 yet, but the Inland Revenue really aren't their own best champions, are they?
Well, the Inland Revenue is interesting because they have teams of people that look after the top 30, 60 companies, corporations. So wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice to have your own personal person at HMRC that you can ring up and have a conversation with about what you're doing with your business at the moment, your tax return that's coming through in the next few days, and have a rather pleasant conversation about that whole process.
High churn, though.
High
churn, never speak to the same person twice.
For sure. That's why I think part of government's solution to this is they have to simplify the tax system. They've got to look at that, because you're absolutely right.
Are we putting the people then that are the collector of taxes in a position that is very, very difficult for them?
Everybody's in a difficult position. You, me, people watching, corporations, government, we're all in a difficult position. You know, life is so complex now that you have to work really hard to make it simple.
But the government, aren't the government bringing in quarterly tax returns very shortly?
Which I think is going to be incredibly difficult to deal with.
They can't really cope at the moment with the year end now, can they?
You know, there are a few things that I'm going to start campaigning on. Okay, right. But I think quarterly tax return for small businesses is not going to be as easy as they are predicting it's going to be. It hasn't happened yet. There are discussions going on at the moment. There are campaigns against it starting at the moment because it's incredibly difficult to do.
But you do feel with the revenue, you do feel that really...
You're working for them?
Well, no. Well, you feel you're working for them, but really, if the rule is coming, it will happen. You really don't feel that there is any influence, and it's let's face it, it is the way that we collect the revenues that we need to run the country.
Yep.
But so you don't feel there is any of that. It's all out. There's no there's no input when it comes to what you want it to do, how you want it to work.
That's why, Steve, we need to remind the government and government departments that they work for us. We don't work for them.
Well, this is it. When you phone up the revenue, you are called a customer.
Well,
no.
I think that that's some management corporation going in there and telling them some management speak. We all know that isn't the case, and there are an awful lot of stories that you and I have heard over the years about the way they treat and talk to small businesses.
However, in their defence, there have been times that I've spoken to them, and they have been charming, they have been helpful. They have resolved an issue.
But it's hit and miss, isn't it?
It is hit and miss because there are times I've spoken to them and they have wanted to come round and steal my firstborn. So, I mean, it's a very, very difficult fine line, but there is no consistency when you do contact them.
No, and that's why, Steve, I'm using the opportunity that has been presented to me as a platform for starting to look at how we can influence dealing with these problems. I want to say the things that people are thinking. I want to say the fact that actually, you know what, HMRC, you can't talk to small business like that. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. All
right, hold that thought then for a moment. Still more to come from Antonio Falco in this edition of Business Connections Live. Hope you're enjoying today's show. It's, I suppose, if anything, it's we ask people to come in to give their views and their help and their opinion. This is probably one of this is one that affects absolutely everybody that is in business, and I suppose really we've got nothing more than a talking shop today, because all we can do is we can talk and we can give opinion, but really there's very little that we can do coming out of this except maybe support Antonio in any campaign that he brings, and maybe try and have an understanding a little bit more when we're talking about large multinational businesses, the likes of Google, because we've got to remember that Google, £130 million tax payment, have done nothing wrong. 3% over the last 10 years. Next time the revenue phone you up, you try getting away with a 3% offer to them. It ain't going to happen. It really will not happen. And it's exactly that. It's exactly the fact that there are rules for one group of organisations and businesses and another rule for another group of organisations. And it seems the small businesses, I mean, I don't know if you know statistically what it is, but the revenue are quite happy to due to cash flow or whatever, bring a small business to bankruptcy, bring them to court and shut them down.
I believe there's many a case that's that's hearsay.
Well, actually, I don't think it is hearsay. But morality, we talk about the morality of the large organisation. Therefore, there's got to be morality on both sides of the fence.
I think we need to put morality in all areas of our life. And I know it sounds like a horrendously pompous thing to say, and we're all out to try and do what we can for ourselves. And what happens is that you get into a situation where you do start thinking about you and your family and to hell with everybody else. I think that needs to change. You asked me earlier on, you know, how do we come together? And I said to you that I think over the past few years that we're starting to look at how businesses operate. And I think that that's just going to grow. Look, I said a second ago...
Don't go there. Hold the thought for a moment. Let me just remind you about our good friends at TubeBuddy, who help us bring you the programme each and every week. TubeBuddy, a fantastic plug-in that goes on your Chrome browser. If you are using YouTube to promote your business and you're using videos to promote your business, we've already talked about the fact that you can make your videos more effective. You can put proper calls to action in there. But once you've done all that and you're using perhaps maybe YouTube as the platform to get those those videos out there? How do you make them more effective? How do you get them found in the searches? It may not be important to you. Maybe you're just using YouTube as the mechanism, the platform to deliver your content on. Sometimes, to be honest with you, YouTube is probably not the best platform for small businesses when it comes to the analytics and what YouTube are looking for in the content that you are actually making. But however, on saying that, as a technical platform, it is truly second to none. There's a few things they could improve on. Now, what happens here with TubeBuddy, it gives you the opportunity to really maximise your return when it comes to using your online videos. It gives you a whole range of tools. For instance, here we've got productivity tools, advanced video embedding onto your website, bulk delete of cards and bulk delete annotations and bulk copy cards. So if you've got a campaign that you're running on one particular video and you think, I'd like to have that across all of my videos, instead of having to go into them one by one, what you can do now is you can just use bulk copy cards and it'll go to all. For instance, we've got something in the order of around about 200 videos up there. If I want to run a campaign across all of them, I use that and it's done in seconds. It just gets on and it updates every single video that's in my YouTube account. There's a whole range of different tools that are really, really useful there, right down to simple things like thumbnail generators, SEO tools for your video as well, channel ranking tracking, search ranking, tag sorter, all the things that you really need. There's sometimes you put up your video and you think, I wish I could change the tags. I wish I had a tool that allowed me to sort the tags. I wish it was a tool that allowed me to research and see just how well my tags are trending. That will give it to you. Promotion tools as well for your description promotion, your featured video promotion. It's all there. And research tools as well to make absolutely certain that you're getting the maximum return, your ROI, on the videos that you put up. One of the features I love on this, by the way, we were talking about Facebook, who pay slightly less tax than you do, don't they?
Slightly less, yeah.
Slightly less tax than you do. If you want to upload your business video to your business page on Facebook, there is a single button that you need to press. It'll lift it from YouTube and it'll take it all the way over and it'll put it up on your Facebook business page. Brilliant tool. If you want more details about it, simply go to our website and you'll find a link to TubeBuddy. Just click on that and there's a bit of a free go. They've got limited resource on there, but if you buy into it, we think it is absolutely brilliant. We'd like to thank the guys at TubeBuddy as well for helping us bring the programme to you. You're watching Business Connections Live. Steve Harlan with you here, and my guest on today's show is Antonio Falco, our business champion today. We've been talking about Google's £130 million tax payment and also the morality in that, if you can legislate against morality. We've looked at a three-prong approach to maybe how we can resolve that. Have we got on to the third prong? Did we do the third prong?
I think we touched on it earlier, Steve.
So touch a little bit more on the third prong of our approach to resolve this.
I think it's us. I think it's us as customers. If you don't like it, don't buy it, don't watch it, don't read it, don't use it. If you're really angry about something, and this happened to Starbucks, admittedly, Stephen, you touched on it earlier, for a very, very short space of time. But when Starbucks were in the news and their corporation tax was announced, a lot of people stopped using Starbucks. So we do have the power ourselves. There is such a thing, as I mentioned earlier on, as people power. We are in the era of people power. There's a lot changing in society at the moment. There's a lot of new thought processes going on. There's a lot of analysis of what on earth's going on. But we ourselves have an element of power in our own hands. We can choose to use something or not. And again, I come back to the story about Facebook, and not one single person said, I'm going to stop using it.
What browser do you use?
I use Google.
Yeah.
And do you know why? Because they've dominated the marketplace. And you'll hear that George Osborne's answer to me was, he ended with, one of the solutions is to actually have our own big American-style corporations that are offering services just as they are.
But you know what? Their headquarters would be in Dublin.
Exactly. but not just that, you can't just set up a Google overnight. It doesn't happen that way. So, as I said earlier on, what you can start to use is social media against them. But yes, of course, that's why what I'm saying is this is a three-pronged approach. Companies themselves need to look at it and go, perhaps we have a duty here. Customers themselves need to look and go, perhaps we can do something ourselves. Perhaps we have the power of changing the way that we use or buy something.
But customers are inherently lazy. If you look at the large energy companies and the large telecoms companies, they depend on the fact that customers won't bother. We would cross the road to save £5 on something maybe in the high street, but to save £200 would be reluctant to change because of the issues and the hassle. And surely, is it their fault or is it all ours?
A collective. You know what, Steve? If they won't change the prices, you change the prices then. How do you change the prices? Go somewhere else.
Yeah, but it's making people do that. And people, for all their protests, you just do not see that churn in the marketplace. You do not see that move. We know, for instance, there are people still out there that haven't gone back to the banks, a little bit of bank bashing concerning PPI. And now it's nearly at the end of it. That's been going on for years. Energy companies rely on the fact that people will not change their supplier. They rely on the fact that you'll pay by direct debit and there'll be a surplus of money sitting in your account that they can live off the interest on effectively. Yeah. So we've got that. Telecoms companies tie you into contracts to make it nearly impossible for you to move within a certain period of time without a penalty clause. It is difficult. As much as we say, only now we begin to see this. I mean, with banks now, you can move your accounts, can't you, relatively easily? Yeah. But all the other services don't allow that.
But Steve,
so we're tied in, so we can't really vote with our feet. And do we really want to?
Well, let me tackle that thing first, your last comment first. Do we really want to? Steve, we all have a responsibility. This is not about
difference between responsibility and do I really want to? Do I want?
That's part of
do I want the hassle?
But that's part of responsibility. So therefore, you've taken a choice, haven't you? You've chosen not to have the hassle, haven't you? You've taken that responsibility, and with your responsibility, you've made a choice. I'm not
saying this is how I feel.
No, I know you're not. No, I'm talking generally. No, I don't mean you. I don't mean you. No, I don't mean. You've used your ability to choose to make that choice, and thereby you've taken the responsibility upon yourself. You see, everybody was arguing before choice that we didn't have enough choice. Well, now that you've got choice, you have the right to exercise your choice. And yes, there are going to be situations where, I'm tied into a phone contract for the next 12 months. But in fairness to corporations, they have to have some stability. They have to have some knowledge of what's coming in terms of their revenue. So, yes, on one hand, you have to be tied into a period of time, and I think that's fair, isn't it? But then you can actually choose at the end of that to walk away.
So they know how much revenue is coming in because they've tied you on the contract. So they're looking after their money, they're looking after their income as a business. And if the tools are there and the laws are there to allow them to maximise the return on that by having headquarters in Dublin, by maybe having trading posts or intellectual copyright, intellectual property sitting on the Cayman Islands, and that they use their money in a more effective way. Isn't that the same message that we tell people all the time? Use your money more effectively. That's what they're doing. The morality is they're actually being quite spendthrift.
Yes. However, that's why I'm suggesting that those corporations maybe look at the way they operate and say to themselves, perhaps we have a duty here. Perhaps we have an opportunity here where we can actually up our own branding, you talked about branding earlier on, up our own brand. Maybe use PR.
Could that be the differentiator between one organisation and another that says that we keep all the profits and we pay all our taxes here in the UK?
Well, you know what, Steve? I think if that ever happened, we'd all fall off our chairs. And I'm not asking for that to happen.
However,
all I'm asking for is a little bit more thought, a bit more process in terms of look at themselves and how do we actually operate as a business here.
And however, that's exactly how every small business in the UK operates. The profits are in the UK and they pay their taxes in the UK.
And that's why I said earlier on that part of the three-pronged approach is government, and what George Osborne announced, whether it works or not is another issue, is the diverted profit tax. So he's trying to tackle that. And what he's trying to say is if you're making profit in this country, you pay tax on it. It's a very, very difficult circle to try and square. But that's why I'm saying we all have a part in this. Government, companies, and us as customers, we all have a part to play. And yes, I think there's a place for morality in business, and that's where we need to start.
1 minute on how we can improve the revenue. 90 seconds.
I think they need to understand that they are working for us. They need to appreciate that, yes, there are going to people that are going to pull their string a little bit and trying to avoid paying their taxes and give them some sob story about why they can't pay their tax at a particular time. I think there needs to be some empathy. If we're truly saying that small businesses are the bedrock of this country and of the economy, and small businesses are going to pull us out of this mess, then you know what? There needs to be some empathy from HMRC. There needs to be some intelligent thought and some intelligent understanding as to what small businesses have to go through day in and day out, and there has to be some respect.
OK, listen, we're nearly at the end of the programme. I cannot believe that the show has flown by. We always ask our guests to give us their final thoughts, the takeaways from the programme at the end of every particular show. Antonio, I'm sure this is going to be... I mean, please, I 100% agree with you. Big businesses have got to get their house in order. We need to have a little bit of morality contact taking place right across large corporations. But I think it does go two ways. I think small businesses as well have also got to treat with respect and empathy people like the Inland Revenue and people like that as
Absolutely.
well, because we are working together to build a stronger economy.
We're all in it together, Steve.
Camera number one is your camera. If you could look straight down camera number one, and the key takeaways that we need from today's programme, please say who you are and where you're from.
My name is Antonio Falco. I'm a small business champion. And I'd like to say to you that whilst everything you've heard may upset you, anger you, or make you question what on earth is going on, let me tell you this. In your own business, just remember to focus on the things you need to do day in, day out. There's always going to be controversy around you. There's always going to be something that makes you cross or upset and you think that it's all against you. But actually, don't let that avoid you doing the things you need to do to build your business. It's good to pay tax. Do you know why? Because it means you've made profit. And so if you want to run an effective and profitable business, just focus on the things you need to do day in, day out, be consistent and persistent. And as part of your marketing mix, why don't you get a video made? They're a fabulous company here. They've done them many, many times. They've done them for my own clients. Use this media to get your message out there. Remember, selling is about exchanging your product or service for a potential customer's money. Incredibly simple, fantastically complex. And you have to be consistent and persistent and focus on your goals.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much indeed for the plug there. That's always really appreciated. If you are a small business, we'd love to hear your comments on this particular programme as well. If you'd like to leave comments on the show, you can go to businessconnectionslive.com. There's a place there where you can feedback your comments about what you've heard on today's programme. It's been a real insight actually talking to you today on the show. Really enjoyed it. And the good passing thoughts as well for that matter. And I think it's really important, as always, that all business owners need to remember what you've been saying today. Can I thank you very much indeed for being on the show? Thank you very much. It was absolutely an excellent programme. Antonio Falco, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.
Listen, we hope you've enjoyed today's programme. It's been a real cracker. Don't forget, as always, we're looking for guests for the programme in the future too. Let me remind you about who's coming up in the future on the programme. Well, on next week's show, we're going to be talking about Greg Cooper from Front of Mind Coaching. One of the most popular programs that we've had on our YouTube channel, in fact, is a program where we looked at LinkedIn and how you should be using LinkedIn. LinkedIn, very, very powerful. LinkedIn, of course, another corporation just recently brought its figures in, and it was just a little bit lower than was expected, in fact, which was quite a surprise for everybody. But could you use LinkedIn to be a way to maybe market yourself, to get out there, to get new prospects? is it a good prospecting tool? And if it is a good prospecting tool, how do you go about then actually prospecting on LinkedIn? Well, if you join us on next week's edition of The Program, we've got a fantastic guest. His name is Greg Cooper, Front of Mind Coaching, and he's going to be updating you on all the latest changes that have taken place on LinkedIn over the last couple of months. That's going to be an absolutely fantastic show. Coming up in a few weeks' time, we've got Chris Anquanta. He's a 21-year-old entrepreneur and CEO of a fantastic brand called Verumo. It's a web-based site for purchasing your vehicles. If you're in business and you're looking for a car, then that's going to be a cracking place to be looking. You can hear from Chris, an entrepreneur who started that business up. And in the near future, we've also got Nigel Bottrell, who's going to be coming. He's part, of course, of the Entrepreneur Circle and also the Best Off. Don't forget, if you'd like to sponsor the program, you can do that too if you wish, or if you'd like to have an ad at the front of the program, or if you'd like to have it featured on your website. Why don't you get in contact with us? Can I give the housekeeping? Is that all right? Thank you very much indeed. You can contact us here at studio at businessconnectionslive.com. You can also telephone us as well on 01784 256 777. Or if you wish, you can follow us on Twitter at BCL Business TV. And that pretty much wraps up today's programme. If you had one last thing to say to our audience just before we do shut the shop today, what do you think it would be? We've talked a lot about morality today. We've talked a lot about what large corporations should be doing. We've talked about how maybe it's unfair to small businesses. But if you had a real personal message, what would it be, do you think?
Well, I'm at the beginning of this journey. It's something that I guess in the back of my mind, Steve, it's something I wanted to do, to represent businesses and try and get an even playing field. It's never going to be completely even, but I just want small businesses to be on the same pedestal as corporations. Just because you're a small business, it doesn't mean you're not important. Just because you're a small business doesn't mean your contract hasn't the same value as a major corporation. So I want to highlight some of the things that are affecting small businesses, and I want them treated in a fair and honest, straightforward manner, just as a corporation. That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm looking to do. I want to highlight the fact that small businesses, we keep getting told how incredibly important we are to society and to the economy. I think small businesses should be on the same level as a corporation, and that's what I want. That's what I'm fighting for them to be seen in the same way.
And the FSB as an organisation, how important a role do you think they play in all of this?
They are part of that mix. The FSB is all about representing the issues that small businesses face. They are about lobbying government to change or affect or influence legislation. So they are part of the mix. You've got other organisations that are representing trade bodies that are representing their particular members. So I think this is just a whole mix of people that are trying to represent those small businesses. I'm just doing it as an individual. I'm lucky, as I said earlier, I've been given a platform. I'm going to try and maximise that as much as I can. And my whole emphasis is that we need to put small businesses on the same level as corporations. We're as important. Collectively, we're more important, actually.
Antonio Falco, thank you very much indeed. Time to roll those credits. Time to go home. Thank you very much indeed for your company again. We'll do it all again next week on another edition of Business Connections Live. And we're talking all about LinkedIn next week. And my guest on the program, of course, is going to be Greg Cooper. Till next week, have a great week. Till then, bye for now. Bye-bye.